So we've got the board set up here on the desk, and what we're going to do next is actually take out the screen. You can see here the screen's being held in by 4 screws, which have hex nuts on the back side of the bottom circuit board. Now, you can't just unscrew these screws without loosening the hex nut first. So you're going to kind of want to turn this thing on its end, kind of set it in your lap, and with a nice little pair of pliers, just kind of twist the hex bolt until it's just finger tight. That way you can set it down on the desk and actually get the screws out. And so I've already done that, and so now I can basically just twist them out. Now once you've got all the screws out, you're going to also want to make sure that the other end of the ribbon cable is disconnected from the bottom of the header. And it's a little easier to just leave that ribbon cable stuck to the black goo on the back so you don't get that everywhere. But the yellow and white cable that actually does the backlighting, that cable we're going to want to just leave on there, because it's easier to just pull that out. Plus we're going to need to re-solder those wires anyways. So basically you're just going to unscrew everything and then pull this off. Just make sure it doesn't get stuck. And there we go. So one dead screen gone, ready for a new one. Okay, so here's our 2 screens, just for a quick comparison here of what we got going on. Here's our new crystal display from Futurelec, and then here is our old original screen from the Oberheim OB-12. Now you can see they're fairly similar. There's a couple differences. I've left the plastic on this one to protect the screen until I'm ready to put it back in, just so I don't accidentally scratch it. And you can see here's your 22 pins for the pin header. Now you're going to be using a 20 pin header block on this thing. You can see on this one, pin header has already been soldered on, along with the 2 wires that connect to the backlighting. Now we're going to need to be able to have a similar setup on this one. Now the screen doesn't come with pin headers, so you're going to need to buy your own, because you're not going to be able to desolder the old ones and reuse those. It's messy and it's just not a good idea. What you're going to want to do is buy a pack. Here's the pack that I bought. This is a 64 pin block. Now, I only need 20 pins, so it's definitely more pins than I need, but you can just break them off to the length that you need to use. And if you had any issues with the installation, you would have more pins to try again. Over here I've got my 20 pin header block that I've broken up off the 64 one, and I've already gone ahead and removed pin 20, and you can see that pin sitting there. This is how the actual header sits inside the synth, and pin 20 is right over there on the top right. And what I did is I took a pair of pliers and just kind of pulled that pin out, because on the new screen you can't have pin 20 installed. If you do, you won't get anything on the screen when you turn it back on. So unlike the old screen, the new screen must have pin 20 removed. So I went ahead and did that with the pliers after I broke this piece off. So when you're installing it, you can see that there's a short end and a long end. the short end is going to be the end that you're going to be soldering. And it's going to sit just like this, and it's going to come up underneath this part of the screen. So you're going to kind of put it down over there like that. And these will just kind of slip in there. You'll notice that pin 20 again is removed. So that one won't be soldered, but you'll be soldering all the rest of them. So that's how you're going to want to have it set up. You're going to want to have pretty small soldering iron. I recommend a pencil style soldering iron. It's a lot more accurate with soldering stuff this small. And there's actually one other thing you're going to have to do with the soldering iron, and that is on the back of the screen there's a resistor right there. And that resistor isn't on the back of the old screen. In fact, the back of the old screen looks somewhat different. So, in order for this to fit in, this resistor actually has to be desoldered from the back of this display and resoldered on the other side of the display right there. Now, the modifications I had to make over here, you can see there's the resistor that used to be on the back of the PCB board. I've now moved it to the front so that this can be put back on to the synthesizer with little trouble. And over here we've got our pin headers, and you can see 1 through 19 are soldered on there. Number 20 is not soldered. And then we have our backlight cables, which I desoldered from the original display and then soldered back onto this display. On the positive, which is the yellow wire, is plugged into 21 and soldered, and the negative, which is plugged into 22, is soldered as well to the back side of the board. And if there's any question, the way to be sure is to look at the actual piece that plugs onto the board. And what you want to make sure of is that the yellow, which is the positive, is on 1, and the negative, which is the white, is on 3. And that's how it's going to plug in, just like that. And so in case for some reason the wires are different colors or something like that, just make sure that 21 goes to 1 and 22 goes to 3. And as long as you have that, it shouldn't matter what color your wires are. Okay, so that's that. So at this point, I'll show you the back. Here you can see that's where the resistor used to be right there, and it's just soldered on the other side. And if you don't remember the orientation of the resistor after you desolder it, that's not a big deal. Resistors, it doesn't matter which way they're facing. I mean, it's nice if you can put it back the same way that you took it out on the other side, but if you forget or something, it's not a big deal. And then over here, here's our header and our wire. You can see there that pin 20 is not in there, and positive's going to 21, yellow, negative's going to 22, white. So at this point we're pretty much ready to go ahead and put this screen back inside the keyboard's board here. And once we put the screen back on the board, we can then put the board back inside the synthesizer.